So good morning, everyone. Welcome to the semifinals for OIM FIB English debate. And yeah, as already previously mentioned, my name is Tizi, and I'll be your chair adjudicator for today. With the motion, this house, as a millennial, will choose to work in a startup rather than a traditional company, with MC as the government and Himaja as the oppositions. Just a quick reminder, before you start your debate, please make sure to state your POI preference. So either just a hands up, or they can stand up, for example. And also reminder for your time. So 1 minute, you can POI, and for the 6 minute mark, you cannot POI anymore. And your maximum time is 7 minutes and 20 seconds. After that, I won't take any notes. And for the reply will be 4 minutes and 20 seconds, the same thing. So if it's above those time limit, I will not take any notes. So yeah. All right, without further ado, let's just start the round. So I welcome the first speaker of the government team. Here.
Test. Alright. Good morning, honorable judges and honorable speakers. My personal POI would be raising your hands, and you can say your POIs. First off, I would say our motion, which is this house as a millennial would choose to work in a startup rather than a traditional company. First off, I would like to define our motion today. The first word is millennial. Based on the Cambridge dictionary, millennial is a person who is born between early 80s to late 90s. And the second term would be startup. Startup is a company that is in the initial stages of business, while traditional company is companies that are that have been established with traditional ideas and beliefs. However, they are conservative. Millennials choose to work in a startup company rather than traditional companies because they are vocal with their needs in work. Millennials tend to want freedom more, and they choose they want freedom more and to choose what to do, and they have control of and want to have control over their work. In a startup company, employees would have more freedom, and have freedom means to have more ways to express themselves. In startup companies, working hours are definitely flexible. They don't pressurize their employees to work certain hours as long as they finish their projects and tasks that are given to them. They also provide a lot of time off if needed, which providing them time off would result on minimize effects of burnt out in employees. And minimizing burning out in employees means they are more efficient in working, and they tend to complete their assignments given to them in a more efficient way. I've mentioned before that being in a startup company, working in a startup company would actually have more freedom. Not only freedom in working hours, but also freedom to express themselves. While expressing themselves in a way that they are allowed to dress in any way possible. They can use flat shoes, or maybe they can use slippers sometimes and work in clothes that are more comfortable. In conclusion, traditional companies don't cater millennials' needs, and they don't encompass modern needs of younger corporations. That's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you from the Prime Minister. And to open the case from the oppositions, I welcome the LO here.
Hello? Test. Okay. My POI preference is just raise your hands, and I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panels, ladies and gentlemen, millennials right now are somewhat of a daredevil. A lot of them tends to love the thrill of high risk, high reward, or the thrill of having freedom in your work. Under our side of the house, we think that those type of thinking are very harmful and very bad. Ladies and gentlemen, before going to my explanation, I would explain to you why under the government side of the house, those freedom can actually lead into a lot of harms to the millennial itself. Firstly, they explain to us in their framing that millennials wants freedom and control over their life. Yes, maybe having freedom and having control over your life, having the enjoyable life of getting exactly what you want and what you need at that exact time, maybe that's good. But we need to think about the risk of actually living under the condition of startup companies, ladies and gentlemen, because I'm going to explain to you in my argumentation why startup companies actually have a higher risk of failure and have a higher risk of ruining your mental health as a millennial. But they also say that living under traditional and conservative ways, and those traditional companies actually doesn't want to change, ladies and gentlemen. But in the status quo right now, there is a lot of examples in which the traditional companies are trying to change to cater towards their workers' rights and their workers' mental health more, or their workers' freedom more. Even in BUMN, for example, there is a lot of movements in which those companies try to make aware more about the mental health issues and actually the living condition of their workers. Moving on into my argumentation, firstly, I'm going to explain to you how startup companies is very uncertain. We need to understand that startup companies are new companies, like they've previously explained before. So they are still in the system in which it is very lacking. For example, the standard of procedures in the working condition, maybe it is still very uncertain. And obviously, they are economically not as stable as traditional companies. And there will be still a lot of trials and errors in terms of like sustaining their company life. For example, a lot of online object companies trying to capitalize on the trends of Gojek, for example, like Bluejack and etc., etc. But obviously they cannot compete with a more stable companies like Gojek and Grab, ladies and gentlemen. So the extent of the harm is that they fail, and a lot of them also relies on trend. I'm not saying, as the opposition side of the house, that we are going to be very pessimistic and say that those companies will always fail. But the higher risk of failure is very impactful, in which that you are as a millennial, you are in your first run of your life, you are in the first run of actually taking jobs, and it is very, very, very bad and very harmful. Obviously, also trends is ever changing and die fast. Like a lot of F&B startups relies on viral marketing trends or hype foods. A lot of them died one by one, ladies and gentlemen. Secondly, as a millennials, like I've stated before, you are in your first run of your life. And obviously, as the government side of the house framing, you prefer freedom and flexibility. But under our side of the house, we try to change the framing into preferring stability in your life. How so? Without economic stability, your life wouldn't be good, ladies and gentlemen. How so? Because it contradicts with the way you want freedom. Because you want freedom because you want your life to be good. No, thank you. But obviously, stability tends to actually support your life better. And even if For example, you have more pressure and you're more work in terms of like actually joining traditional companies, but you will have more profit and benefit that I will explain to you later. But I would explain to you in my next argumentation is how startup companies actually going to impact your mental health in a worst case scenario. Ladies and gentlemen, obviously startup company have a higher chance of failure, and in that higher chance of failure, you will have more pressure, you will have more stress level, you will have the uncertainty in your life that, okay, my company may be going to fail in the next future. It could fail, ladies and gentlemen, and okay, maybe you're not going to have they said that you're not going to have a lot of overwork and etc., but you will have a lot of work because that company is still new and you're trying to build that company, ladies and gentlemen. And if you're failed when you're younger, it will going to impact you more in the sense that you wouldn't have financial stability, and secondly, you will feel like you have failed in your younger days, and you will feel that you cannot go to a higher level, ladies and gentlemen. In my last argumentation, how that going to traditional companies going to benefit you in the long-term scenario. Firstly, you will have like a more stable rate. Other companies in the status quo right now will see your track record and your CVs in a better way because they actually trust traditional companies more. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, we think that being stable and having stability in your life is actually more impactful than having the freedom of choosing how you want to be, choosing how your work life going to be, but not having a long-term benefits and not having the future that you want as a millennial. Therefore, we as the opposition side will oppose this motion. Thank you so much.
Okay, so thank you for the LO, and to further grow the case from the government, I welcome the DPM. Here.
Honorable judges, honorable speakers, and audience. First of all, in traditional companies, it lacks the opportunity to build stronger relationships, and stronger relationships between coworkers equals stronger trust. In traditional companies, a new employee would often be isolated from their peers, resulting in burnouts and stress and even mental health problems. This would very much affect their work and tasks and even affect their careers as well. In startup companies, you are allowed to embrace the trial and error mindset to learn and grow from your mistake. For example, in a traditional company, if you make a single mistake, you feel more pressured, whereas an employee who works in a startup company would be given more chances and opportunity to learn from their mistake. Innovation and new minds are the key to success. Traditional companies hold traditional values, and it rarely allows creativity or new innovation, and results in defeat when facing other companies. For example, the example I would take for a real-life company would be Nokia. As we know that Nokia was very successful in the early 2000s, and it was the leading leading company for the cell phone industry. But due to their lack of innovation and their conservative beliefs, they were defeated by brands like Apple, Samsung, who made innovations in technology, specifically phones. So, in conclusion, building stronger relationships and stronger trusts is very important
it for their mentality, their mental health, as well as embracing a trial and error mindset, which traditional companies rarely allows, and as well as innovation and new minds are, as I said, the key to success. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for the DPM speech. And to further elaborate the opposition case, I welcome the DLO. Here.
I would start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to rebut, as a sake of speaker, I would like to rebut what the government team have said in their, the second speaker of the government team have said. Firstly, they said that traditional companies lacks opportunities to build relations for new employees due to the fact that, due to the statement of the said new employees were given less chance to be able to bond or create relations with other older or senior employees. We have already stated, our speakers have already stated that the example, which is the women, is more mentally aware in the current state of era. They are currently changing and currently developing their model and work ethic to further suit the millennials' needs. This we create by creating movements. For example, I'm bringing one of the BUMN companies, which is Mandiri, Bank Mandiri, and also Jasa Marga. Both companies have started creating outbounds or outgoings or movements where the seniors are given a chance to meet the juniors and are be able to bond furthermore with each other. Secondly, I would like to rebut with how many the government team have stated with how many traditional saying that traditional companies can also fail by also bringing the example, which is Nokia. And besides bringing Nokia, the government team have brought Samsung and Apple as being the startup. Firstly, I would like to bring attention that Samsung and Apple is not a startup company. Samsung has existed older since the 1800s, if I'm not mistaken, and Apple is also not a startup company because Samsung and Apple has already had funding from the prior owners. Sorry. Next, I would like to give another argument, and by ladies and gentlemen, I would like to shed a new light, a new argument, which is also by thinking about the families, our families, as a millennial, we have our families. By pursuing traditional companies, we are able to give more stable. We are able to give more stable income to our companies. As our first speaker has already mentioned, traditional companies give better pension, no thank you. Traditional companies give better pension money and better benefits in the long-term run and the long run. More stable meaning that in a traditional companies, you are more or less likely to be fired or less likely to have your company fail. Even if your company has, let's say, a bad CEO or a bad reputation or a bad movement or a bad decision making in a traditional company, those kinds of bad decisions are less likely to have a failure in which the company would fail and be bankrupt. In a startup company, because it's still new and it still doesn't have any money, those chances are being far more greater to happen. Sorry. Next, I would also like to shed light to startup companies tend to have unprepared CEOs. You see a trend where startup companies appear and then suddenly they disappear in a short amount of time for a company that is really quick to disappear. One of the causes would be the unpreparedness of the CEO. For example, let's say one of the startup company that fails besides the online project company would be Menanti by Jerome Pauline. We see that it appears quick, but it also disappears quick as well due to the unpreparedness and due to the poor decision making by said person. This would create an also bad work environment due to this would create bad environment and going back again to give more stress to the employees because the work is not balanced and it's not as expected, and also the money that comes from that company does not come to the employee as well. I think that is all from our side of the team. I would like to thank everyone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the DLO speech, and to close the substance argument from the government, I welcome the OIM government. Here.
Thank you, honorable judges, and thank you to the opposition team for their arguments. Firstly, let me just say, ladies and gents, what exactly is life without risk? Obviously, we all have taken risks in our life. For example, even going to OIM itself is a risk that we have taken. If we were to choose a more stable choice, then we would have gone to a private university instead. But no, instead, we all have decided to take a risk. Now, that risk can be said to be going to a startup company instead of a traditional company. Now, let me just rebuttal the arguments said by the opposition team. Firstly, that is being BUMN as their example. Now, let me just say that most traditional companies such as BUMN, they do not, well, yes, they have changed in recent years. However, they still hold on to the belief that people with more experience, people with more years working in thus aforementioned companies should deserve a higher position. However, in contrast, in startup companies, they prefer people who are actually qualified for their jobs. For example, in a company that uses a website, or they would employ people specifically who know more about software development. However, in traditional companies, they would employ people who merely work the longest as the head of their departments, rather than someone who is actually qualified for their jobs. Now, as my previous teammates have uttered out their arguments, now I will be explaining more on the examples. Now, ladies and gents, think of companies as families, as parents. They are meant not only to make money, but also to nurture, to ensure growth and talent of their employees. Now, if we were to go to a traditional companies with strict beliefs, strict morals, then imagine that parent having strict beliefs, strict morals. Now, what would that cause to the children, to the employees? Trauma. Now, we do not want traumatized employees. We want employees who have good lives, who have freedom, who have the ability to express themselves, who have the ability to know what they want. Now, in traditional companies, that would be less likely than if you were in a startup company, as my previous speakers have mentioned before. Now, some may argue, but traditional companies, they have too much freedom. Isn't that what we try for in our country? Remember, ladies and gents, our country tries for kemerdekaan ialah hak segala bangsa. We try for freedom itself. What is kemerdekaan? Kemerdekaan is freedom. Now, apart from that, failure. Let me just re-emphasize that in startup companies, while some may argue that failure is more likely, then is it that not how life works? If we fail, we try and try again. It not only builds your character, it builds growth. It builds who you are. Now, in startup companies, you would only be forced to stick at what you do, stick in a certain criteria. While in startup companies, you are able to explore more what you want to do, what you are good at. Now, let me just summarize what my previous speakers and I have said. First of all, startup companies, they are more liberal. They are in contrast to the conservative beliefs of traditional companies. Furthermore, with the free environment and more innovation that the startup companies believes in, the employees have more freedom to express themselves as well. Additionally, there are more chances to be independent, to grow your character. Now, in traditional companies, you are only expected to learn by mimicking. But in startup companies, you can learn how to be a better person, how to be a better businessman, or whatever section you are in the company by learning independently. Now, furthermore, they hire more qualified workers, have more strong relations because you are working from the bottom itself, and you encounter more trial and errors. Furthermore, ladies and gents, in traditional companies that are depicted in movies and etc., have you not heard the phrase, "Oh, I hate my boss. Oh, I hate my job"? Now, is that possible? Is that often heard in employees from startup companies? That is all. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. Thank you for the speech from the government web. And to close the substance argument from the opposition, I welcome the opposition's web.
For my PR preference, I prefer for hand raise. Start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, the opposition team is very sad that the government team seems very pessimistic about how they feel about traditional companies. And we as a government team see that traditional companies in a very more great opportunity for the millennials, and we think that the traditional companies will have a better place for the millennials. Why? I will start my speech with rebutting some of the government team point of view. Like the first one is, they said that the government team has said that the freedom that the startup company give them more freedom, and therefore the employees will have chances to express themselves. But what is the impact of expressing themselves in a company, and what are the urgencies of expressing themselves in the company have to the growth and also their stability in terms of gaining money? Because, ladies and gentlemen, we cannot lie that money is very important thing, and we think that money will give you stability and it will take care of your life. And the government team also said about also said about the flexibility of working, which gives more times off, which actually we can see here that the startup company have a lot of times off, and it seems that it show to us how the startup companies doesn't have still very lacking in the procedure, because they don't have actually packed schedules and etc. And we believe that the traditional company have more stability terms of procedure. And we see some of the unrelated urgency as the first speaker of the government team about clothes that are more comfortable to use in the startup company. Like, what are the urgency of having those kind of flexibility in terms of work? Because I don't, we as the opposition team doesn't really think that it's an important thing to think about in terms of working. And the government team is very pessimistic about thinking about how the traditional company will forever stay conservative, as they, in their speech, they always say that the traditional company will always stay conservative, but the government team has said that traditional companies also have made some movement, and we also, and the traditional company also nowadays in the status quo also inviting a lot of millennials to work with them and to learn in the traditional companies, and therefore there's a movement, and we have a chance to look at the traditional company will not stay conservative. However, it's very sad that the government team always keep saying that the traditional company will stay conservative, and the government team also said that that the traditional company appreciate people who have experience to hold the company, and therefore it's strengthen our point from the government team, from the opposition team, that the traditional company is more stable than the traditional company, because traditional companies is held by people who actually have experience. Therefore, it's reduced the chances of failure. And thank you. And in fact, BUMN has hired more youngsters nowadays, and this by doing this, not only BUMN is changed for the better goods and make some movement, but also in hiring some millennials to learn with them. Therefore, it's not filled with only olders. And yes, taking risks is okay. It's very good to taking risks, but in the status quo, we think, the opposition think that we think that taking risks is not a very good idea, because when the company fail, it's gonna harm ourselves. It's gonna harm the employee self, because we will not gain stability, and when they get fired and stuff, they will not be able to find another job too, and will harder for them to find another job and work in a company, as the opposition team has said. And there are some clashes that I would like to say during the debate. And the first of all, about the long term and short term, the opposition team think about the long term of the employees going to the traditional company, but the government team focusing on freedom, which only the short term, because they keep believing about the freedom, while our team believe that in pursuing long term effects, as the first speaker has said about the retirement money, which is more stable, because traditional company is more stable than startup company. Also, when we have a higher chance to upgrading themselves by step, and also it's already standing up older than the startup companies. Therefore, it's more flexible, and we think that flexibility is way better than we think that stability is way better than flexibility, because stability means money, and when we have money, we're gonna be happy. Also, the employees gonna be happy, and therefore we think that's important than flexibility. And therefore, the opposition team will choose to work in a traditional company rather than in a startup company. Thank you. Okay, so thank you for that, the opposition's whip. And to close the entire case from the oppositions, I welcome the opposition's reply. Here.
Okay, I'm gonna start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, panels, honorable teammates, and my government team opposition. We think, as the opposition side of the house, we think that this debate is very interesting because we're talking about millennials that are going to a certain companies, right? We are talking about where we want to be as an employee. Under our side of the house, we applaud the government side of the house for being very brave in a sense of being very brave in taking risks, being a risk taker, and being a daredevil. But the government side of the house needs to understand that the world right now in the status quo is very unstable. So we think that the urgency is very much more needed to actually go to a stable companies, to actually have stability in your life rather than having a flexibility. I've already stated before, okay, we under our opposition side think that having flexibility is a good thing, but it's not a good thing under the world right now, under the urgency in which the world is ever changing and needs stability in your life. So we believe that being a traditional company employee will benefit you more and not gonna harm you in the long run. So in this debate, we think that there's two clashes in this debate, which is freedom and stability, which is more urgent and more exclusive towards one of those points. We think in the government side of we think in the opposition side of the house, we want that clash because we already explained to you how stability will benefit you more in terms of like you having the stability in your life, having more money, and also we bring another point in terms of benefiting your family more, in which your family will have that stability and will have that money and will have that security in your life, in their life, ladies and gentlemen. And secondly, talking about short-term versus long-term benefits. We think in the opposition side of the house that the government tends to think more about the short-term benefits, that they glorify failure and rising back like a phoenix, in which we say that very type of thinking is very toxic because we already explained to you how so in failing in your younger days will make you suffer mentally more under the status quo, ladies and gentlemen. In our side of the house, we think that in the terms of long-term benefits, it is far more exclusive because you will have more established life, you will have that security, and will also give you more opportunities. And in terms of like traditional versus startup companies, we think that under our explanation, we already explained to you how so that under traditional companies, all of the harms and all of the things that opposition said about like having more pressure and cannot have bonds with your other employees or not having bonds with your higher ups, for example. Under our side of the house, we already explained to you that traditional companies are ever changing and trying to take care more about the millennials and etc. etc. Therefore, under opposition side of the house, we think that we already won this debate. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for the closing from the opposition reply. Next, to close this entire debate, I welcome the government reply. Here.
Thank you, my honorable judge and opposition speakers. Now, I would like to first mention that the opposition speakers are very afraid to take risks, and that is exactly what makes traditional companies lose in the market, and more importantly, millennials choosing startup companies. Now, every company starts as a startup company. Without innovation, how would the traditional company even exist? It is not about failing, it's about personal preference. Millennials are more likely to be fired because of different beliefs. The point I'd like to make was that traditional companies, as my third speaker had said, positions should be based on skills and qualifications, not how long they've been there. It's never harmful to try, and taking bigger risks equals bigger rewards and outcome. Weren't companies like, let's say, Kopi Kenangan, they were startup companies as well. Now, look how successful they have become. Expressing themselves is, for example, expressing thoughts and exposing new trends, expressing new ideas, and that is exactly what makes startup companies more ideal, because it also gives a bigger opportunity to be successful. Now, it is also an urgency that ensuring a positive mental health, and we should prioritize that instead of money. Trying and failing is not as detrimental as working in a toxic workplace, and employing millennials doesn't change conservative system in the company. And also, there is another clash in urgency, which is mental health. Now, I would like to mention as well that our government actually encourages more startup companies in Indonesia. That is all I'd like to say. Thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you for the speech from the government reply. And okay, so for the debaters, you may go, I think, outside, because I will need like 5 to 10 minutes to check my notes and to make the decisions. So yeah, you guys can go back in like 5 to 10 minutes. I think the committee can ask you guys to go in again, but for now, just go outside and wait. Thank you. Okay, so first of all, I'd like to say thank you for that very interesting debate. And since this will be no oral adjudication, so I'll just go straight to my decisions. But after this round is over and you guys want to ask questions, clarifying, or personal feedback, basically, you guys can, yeah, I gotta go. So you guys can reach me out to WhatsApp. I think you can just ask my number from the committee. Okay. So without further ado, the winner for the first session of the semifinals of FIB OIM debate, it's the opposition. So congratulations for Himaja and comments for IMSI. Right. Once again, if you guys have any questions, you guys can go ask my number or right now. It's fine. Thank you.
Second session of semi-final debate. We have ESJ and ICME. You may go to the stage right now. Wait, I'm sorry, not yet. Today's debate will start and I will give the mic to the moderator.
Hi everyone, good morning. Let me introduce myself. I'm Fadil. I'm gonna be the moderator slash Eju for today, and yeah, let's have a great round. Timnya hari ini siapa aja tadi? ESJ and ICME. Is everyone complete? Okay. So then let's just do the motion launch, and everybody please nyatet ya. Okay. Next slide. Okay. For the motion launch, there's gonna be a context slide. The context slide says that polywork, it means that to have multiple jobs at multiple companies rather than a single job at a single company. Does anyone have any motion? Does anyone have any questions for the motion for the context slide regarding the wording or anything else? You may take pictures of this. Any questions? Going once? Going twice? Okay, no questions. Next slide. Danger prevention slide. Next slide. The motion reads, as a skilled worker, this house prefers a world where polywork was the norm. Does anyone have any questions for the wording of the motion? Skilled worker means that you could have multiple skills that could be valuable to a company or could do multiple job descriptions. It depends on the definition from the teams. Any questions anymore? ICME ya. Terus ESJ, any questions? Yes? The norm means where, let's say, it's a widely held practice. So a lot of people do it, and yeah, it's not just like, okay, there's a one person doing it at one single company, but like a lot of people are doing it in a lot of companies. Okay, any more questions regarding the wording of the motion? Going once? Going twice? Okay, no more questions. The time is 10:18 and case bill. Oh, bejir. Oke. Enggak ada di itu di matchup.
Yang pertama di atas.
Enggak bahas. Okay. ESJ as government and ICME as opposition. Okay. The time is 10:18. Case building time is 30 minutes, and debate starts at, let's say, 10:50. Okay. Government may case build inside the room and opposition outside. Okay, everyone. Good luck. Okay, since everybody's here, let's start the debate. But before that, let me reintroduce myself. I'm Fadel, I go by he, him, and I'll be your adjudicator slash moderator for this debate. Debating under the motion as a skilled worker, this house prefers a world where polywork was the norm. Sejarah as the government, ESJ, and Jerman. Okay. German apa program studi Jerman as the government and IGMI as the opposition. Okay, without further ado, I call upon Prime Minister, first speaker from the government, to open the debate. Here.
Tes, tes. Tes, tes. Alright. Okay. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Okay, good morning everyone. We are going to debate the motion with, as a skilled worker, this house prefer a world where polywork was the norm. Let's say, first thing first, let's make a definition of what kind of skilled worker is and what does it mean by the norm itself. First thing first, skilled worker. Okay, it's just a simple definition. Worker that have a certain skill to be able to qualify in certain jobs. We know that the jobs can be white collar worker jobs like in office, marketing manager, or whatever it is, and include a skill of be able to working as something like kind of a freelancer, like design, or maybe you work in a cafe and etc. and etc. Okay, and then moving on to the multiple jobs, like in a common, someone can have multiple jobs. Like first job is the full-time one, and then the second one is a part-time one. The full-time one can, for example, can be a white-collar job, like in the office in the weekday, and then in a weekend they can work as a freelancer designer, or maybe work as a waiter or a barista in a cafe, and etc. etc. And then for the norm itself, it can be the norm. It can be available, or can be valid, but it is include but not limited to a young worker. Okay, why the norm itself? The norm itself is fit with a young worker. First thing first, we have to know the character of a young person, like all of us. Yeah, a young person, they want to explore, make exploration for themselves, and then they need to experience. They have to gain experience for themselves, and a young person still want to know what kind of place that fit them in this kind of world. So it is okay to for a young person to be polywork, because they have stamina, they have physical stability that more than just old worker, like in 40s or 50s years old. But young worker is kind of young adult, like in 20s or 30s, that have big stamina and a hunger achiever that need to be exploration themselves, and most importantly, they don't have any dependent, like family or child yet. Okay, so let's take a look at our world. That a polywork itself, it's actually something that's really common in this world, and then it's actually okay to everyone to do it. Okay, and then let's moving on to the why this issue or this polywork things it's kind of an urgency to be preferred or to be a norm itself. Okay, the reality is the one job is not enough to someone that have high big dream or is someone to high achiever. And then it's really common itself to be someone that high achiever, and then everyone now focus on work with your passion or let's do something that we like, but really it's not enough. The passion itself is not enough to fulfill your needs and your dreams. So actually it's very okay to have multiple work at the same time. Okay, so and the big dream or big goal itself, it can be financial freedom, it can be achieving happiness in your old days when you getting old, and you can be happy because you have everything to fulfill your wants. So why it's justifiable to have multiple work at the same time? It's nowadays many companies that offer many flexible working hours for their employees. So if opponent questioning about what about the work-life balance and itself, it's the decision to have multiple work at the same time is already make them have consequences to have multiple have also multiple responsibilities to the employer. And really, guys, if someone is a high achiever, then high achiever, and they want to be someone rich or maybe happy, and well, that's also okay. It's very okay. So let's take a look at let's take a look at a close example like someone like Raffi Ahmad. Everyone call them Sultan, but is it is he be a sultan in a night? Of course not. Raffi Ahmad is very hostile worker. They be an artist, they be a host in a TV program and itself, and they also have a business in outside their work. So if you want to be a high achiever and your goal is fulfilled, you should accept the trade-off of it. You should you don't have many time to your friends, you don't have many time to like watch movie or etc. And that is okay if you take the consequences. So as a government, we really proud to prefer work where polywork was the norm. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for that speech. Next, to open the case for opposition, I call upon LO. Here.
All right, I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. As we can see from the status quo, economy is already all over the place. We can see that there are a lot of discourses about livable wages, a lot about workers' rights, about strikes and everything. That means that there are a lot of dissatisfaction from the laborers, right? But to combat this dissatisfaction, the government believes that instead we should implement polywork to be the norm. Now the opposition would like to say that polywork is just a wolf in sheep's clothing. It's just a sugar-coated term, because polywork is basically work more for less, work more jobs for less pay. And I will elaborate why it will entail for less payment for most of the laborers, right? So now what we are doing here, right? Companies are all for profit. Sure, there might be moral companies, but companies only exist to gain profit. So even the most moral companies will want profit. So the job of the governments, the job of other social members of the society is to make sure that these companies do not overstep the line, to make sure that they do not exploit the workers. And we believe that what the government is trying to propose will foster an environment that will make the laborers more prone to exploitation from the companies. Now, we will say that the opposition stance, we strongly stand with the workers. We want humane environment for workers. We want them to have livable wages. We want their rights to be respected. Now, on to my arguments. Why is poly work as the norm a bad thing? Now, first of all, continuing to my point that I made, poly work will open doors for workers' exploitation. Why? Because if poly work becomes the norm, then the companies will adjust. It is the norm, right? So they will adjust and their policies will adjust, including the wages policy. Because it is the norm for people to have multiple jobs, why should companies pay them as much as they are paying them now? No, they're not going to pay them more. They're only going to pay them less. Because the norm is for the workers to have multiple jobs. It's the responsibility to have livable wages is on the workers' shoulders. Now, second of all, most jobs are already taking up a lot of times, right? 9 to 5, most jobs are 9 to 5 on the weekdays. People only get 2 days off. Now, making poly work the norm will mean that people will have even less and less time for themselves, even less and less time for their families, for their lives, etc. And it would also be harder for them to get paid leave. It's already hard enough for people nowadays, for workers nowadays, to get paid leave, emergency leave, maternity leave, paternity leave, menstrual leave, and all those things. Now, having working in multiple companies will make it even harder for them to get the leave that they deserve, the leave which is their right. Now, this in general will make the working environments, if we make poly work the norm, then these working environments will also be the norm. And that will lead to even harder working environments for the workers. Now, my second argument is that this will lead to higher and more competitive workers. What does that entail? Now, a more competitive workforce means that it will be harder for many people to get jobs because it is the norm for these skilled workers to get more than one job. And even if this norm is only targeted to skilled workers, as per the definition of the government, it fosters an environment that pushes people to all be skilled workers. And this is not going to work for a lot of different communities, of which I will elaborate later. Now, it will also make people easier to get laid off, and because if the two jobs, if having less than 2 jobs becomes the abnormal, then most people who can only work 1 job for several different reasons, things will get worse for them. Now, my last argument, and arguably the most important argument, is this will lead to higher social disparity. And how will it lead to that? Well, marginalized people will have a harder time mobilizing the social ladder because it will be harder for them to gain the skills that the government said people should have, right? They will have less opportunity, will have less education to better their CV, to make themselves more competitive in the job market. Now, that means that the disprivileged won't have the means to be competitive. Now, this is really answering the point from the Prime Minister about how Raffi Ahmad is a hard worker and he can be where he is right now, or any other examples, right? But that is because he's privileged. And not a lot of people have the same privilege as him. He is able-bodied, and he has the capital to be where he is right now. Not a lot of people are like that. And for these people, they won't have the means to climb the social ladder, right? About that saying about how younger people should have multiple jobs because it will lead to more fashion because they still have energy. Well, what about disabled people? There are a lot of people who are not able-bodied. There are a lot of people who already have struggles with their physical and mental health. What about them? They're already marginalized as it is. It's already hard enough for them to get a job. If we make it harder, then who will care for them? How will they take care of themselves? Because the system is already making it harder for them to even pick themselves up, right? So our conclusion is this. The status quo is already inhumane. It's already hard for people to have a livable wage. And this will only double the negatives while taking all of the benefits from what we have right now. And my final question is, what kind of society are we pushing right now? Thank you.
Thank you, Elo, for that speech. Next, to continue the case for team government, I call upon DPM here.
Okay, I'm gonna start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna highlight some points here. First, I'm gonna start with the cost of living. I think it's we already know that the cost of living today is really raised significantly. So it's really important to have multiple jobs in order to survive in this world. And the way to survive is to have a side hustle. For having side hustle, it's really common to have right now, especially for workers who are already underpaid in one company, or even for people who maybe have a side something that they passion about. So in order to avoid the stagnant or the boredom in the company, they need to find another job that's suitable for the passion. And it's not just good to avoid the boredom, feeling stagnant, and feeling worthless in one company. They also can pursue the goals, gain some money, and also they can also gain some new skill. And also, it allows them to experience a lot of things in order to pursue the goals and the dreams. Okay, and next, my point is about competition. I think it's really common that we have a high competition here. So I think to be a competitive worker is not something wrong to do. And I think for competitive workers, something common to do because there's so many companies that require a high skill and also high requirement. So they have to they have to gain some skill in order to survive in one company. And then about the exploitation. For exploitation, I think I want to define this. Exploitation can be defined that a company that they ask the employee to work more than 40 hours per week, which the standard working hours in Indonesia or even in other countries is 40 hours per week. So if they need the employee to work more than 40 hours per week, that can be defined as exploitation. No, thank you. So if you want to avoid the exploitation, or maybe you want to be respected in the company, that means you need to
need to gain to or improve your skills. And you need to understand that some company may be unexpected for underqualified workers. Okay, and next, my point is about. Okay, as my first speaker mentioned about young workers, it's really good opportunity for young workers to explore something, to explore some new experience, some new skill, and some new things that may be something they're passionate about. For example, if you, you have a passion to be an actress, and you need a side job while you doing auditions or something like that. It's really common to have a side job or second job. Okay, and also about a work-life balance. I think it's okay if you have to work for more than 40 hours. For example, if you work in one company for 40 hours a week, and then you have side hustle that and you have to spend around 60 hours a week. I think it's still suitable or still normal to do. But in one condition, maybe you can just spare one day, just only one day, for you to do something like spend time with family, hang out, or maybe doing a hobby, something that you enjoy to do. And it's very common in Germany for some people to have multiple jobs to pursue the goals, or but they have one goal that on Sunday they have to stop working. They don't allow to even some many shops and store their clothes on Sunday. That means the government appreciate the workers to have just one day to relax, to get some rest, or to do something outside the job. And also, I want to mention about the urgency. So some people, maybe they have financial problems that they can force them to have a second job or maybe multiple jobs. But I would say, I want to highlight here, if you want to have a side job, it's really important for you to be able to manage your time. It's very important about time management. And also you have to find maybe something, a job that can allow you to have flexible hours. Or maybe you can find a job that can allow you to work hybrid or remotely. So you still can have time to manage between the first job, the main job, and the side hustle or the second job. And also by doing this, for example, if you take this second job, start in young age from 25 until 35, I think it's good for you to save some money. So before you reach the age of 40, you're gonna have a financial freedom, and you don't have to deal with money problem anymore. Before you decide. Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that speech. Next, to continue the case for team opposition, I call upon DLO. Here.
My speech will start. Will start in 3, 2, 1. So, ladies and gentlemen, the main argument that the government team has been bringing again and again is that the only way to gain financial stability is by having multiple jobs, ladies and gentlemen. But the thing is, right, ladies and gentlemen, what they forgot to mention, they forgot to think about is that most jobs, most countries, especially Germany, that the second speaker has brought up, they have minimum wage law and guarantee, so that they would have a good life in the first place with the first job, and have can gain a better life in the second one. But the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, the whole notion, the whole motion of this debate is that if we change this into the norm, if we change having multiple jobs as the norm, ladies and gentlemen, most things, right? Most things that people want to get and can have is only be able to be gained by two of them. The thing is, having the norm to spend multiple hours, multiple day and night cycles, working two jobs at the same time, it's generally not what you want, as the government team has brought up. For the first speaker has brought up the example of Raffi Ahmad. Raffi Ahmad is not born poor. Raffi Ahmad is privileged, and thus he can gain plenty of advantages because of that, ladies and gentlemen. And today I'm going to bring a different characterization that is of the poor, the people that will be affected the most, and what my first speaker has already brought up. The thing is, ladies and gentlemen, right, having multiple jobs as a poor is not something that you can have, that you can gain. Because, ladies and gentlemen, having poor means having less means for necessity, having less means to get a job, having less means to get education. How can you, if working two jobs is the norm, how can you afford education? How can you afford the time? Remember, to gain something. Before that, I would ask the government team, is there any POIs before I move on? Perhaps. Is there any POIs? I do not usually like to be disturbed, so is there any POIs? In 3, 2, 1. So I'm going to continue. So having as your main argument as if, right, the only way to gain a normal wage, going to have livable wage, is by having people work more hours instead of better regulation. Ladies and gentlemen, many companies like Apple, Microsoft, and all of the big companies that we all know is overvalued, and most workers are undervalued. And because of that, they cannot have a living wage working one job at the same time, which is their right. Having livable wage, having a stable wage, having financial independency is not something that you should race for. It's not something that you should take one people have and one other not. So, ladies and gentlemen, I will call polywork as a discrimination against the workers, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. First, I'm going to bring the first rebuttal that the government has brought up is that most people could not afford a pension. If they could not afford a pension, people could not afford a good life if they don't work two jobs at the same time, if they don't grind hard enough, if they don't have a side hustle. But the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, those things exist. Those things are in trend right now because the economy is really bad, and there needs to be government change. There need to be legislation change. Ladies and gentlemen, the government team has brought up this notion as a replacement to government change and government working towards making better pay for the workers, making the companies pay them a livable amount, which is not the norm right now, by the way. And I think we should focus on that more and more. And ladies and gentlemen, the biggest thing that the government team has brought up is they're all arguing about part-time in general, not as a norm, something that you could do, but you shouldn't. But you could. It's optional, right? But in this notion, making it the norm, making it everybody doing the exact same thing is very different than what characterization that they built, right? The thing is, of course, we can acknowledge here that all people here are quite privileged, right? And by having that way of thinking, I'm sorry, if we were to I'm really sorry. By people needing to work more hours, by people needing to work more hours as a norm, having less free time. Less free time is the least they have to worry about, because time is not something that you can just do for leisure. Time means things to you. Time that you could work on yourself. Time that could use to heal. The thing is, ladies and gentlemen, this notion is burdening certain people that are not lucky enough to have good wages in the first place, which the second speaker again has brought the case of Germany, where this is the norm. But ladies and gentlemen, we don't forget that Germany has a livable wage, unlike many other places in the world. So if we were to make it a norm, most people wouldn't survive. Second, emergencies happen, disasters happen, and you expect us to have two jobs at the same time. Not to mention that this is especially painful to women who have pregnancies and cannot have menstrual leave, which is not a right in many countries. And since they have to have two jobs, they have to bear being pregnant and having menstruation at the same time. And with that, I am proud to oppose. Thank you. I'm sorry for the cough.
Thank you for that speech. Next, to summarize the case from Team Government, I call upon Government Whip here.
Okay. Test. Okay. I will start my speech at 3, 2, 1. Okay. For the first part of my speech, I will give my rebuttals of every case that they are brought up. First thing first, exploitation. The first speaker said that the company is exploited the workers. But exploitation is defined if the company make the workers to work more than they have to do. But what if there's also high achiever people that voluntarily want to work at multiple companies? And the second thing that the speakers first said that the company is profit oriented, but multiple skilled company allow the company to utilize their skills to flourish the company more. So it's a win-win solution for the workers and also for the company. Also, sure, the second speaker, you can say they are privileged, but there are also unprivileged people who don't have any choice and choose to be a poly worker. So it's not exclusive things. It's not exclusive things in our status quo. It's a common thing for us. We are not enforcing them. Norm is not something that we are enforcing them to work multiple jobs, but it's voluntarily. We cannot limit them to work multiple jobs because it's their choice. Again, it's their choice. It's first thing that they are failed to understand. Okay, so basically, this has already happened in our status quo, as I mentioned, and in our generation, they set the bar. Specifically to have, they set the bar too high, specifically to have multiple jobs at multiple companies. It's a common thing. And in Indonesia, for instance, there are a lot of companies not giving minimum wage for their employees, while other companies has followed the standard of minimum wage. But sometimes it's not enough for the employees to live their life. And therefore, that's why the workers choose to be a poly worker. So poly work, again, as our first speaker mentioned, poly worker is defined by many things, such as you can be an employee in one big company on weekdays and be a barista on weekend, and and the other thing may be like you can have on-site job and remote job at the same time, and it's really okay. It's already happening in our status quo. It's our norm. It's not exclusive things, right? Also, a work-life balance while being a polywork can be well managed too, such as like our first speaker said that Raffi Ahmad, he working for his rents company and also be a host in many TV channel programs and could also have leisure time with his family. And let's take a look another example. such as an employee work for more than 60 hours per week, which means he worked for 10 hours per day. That also means he could have one day to hang out or have leisure time with his family or friends and another thing. And realistically, people that decide to be a poly worker must have a meaningful purpose, especially in our status quo. The one who works at multiple companies is more likely young adult who wants to achieve more experience, more skills, and more everything that you can mention. So yeah, so I can summarize that at their unproductive age, they don't have to. So at their productive age, they don't have to hustle anymore. They could have more time to rest, to have more to play with, to have more time with their family, for instance. Therefore, work-life balance and being polywork is really possible to do. Thank you, and I'm proud to support.
Thank you for the speech. Next, to summarize the debate for opposition, I call upon opposition whip here.
Test. Okay. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, I will be doing a rebuttal on the third speaker's first. Now, she mentioned the fact that exploitation is, never mind, let me go into the other topic, which is the workers work more, and it's a voluntary working thing. And that still considers that this is the norm, ladies and gentlemen. Why is that the case? If this is the norm, then it is not a free choice anymore. Then we need to know the fact that this will inevitably affect other people as well, other people who are underprivileged, and like my second speaker has previously mentioned, those who are not capable of withstanding these norms, which is why this norm will not be good for the status quo, given the fact that the status quo is already bad as it is. On top of the norm, this will make it double the negatives, exactly like what my first speaker has also mentioned. And next, companies at the end of the day will always be profit-oriented. That is how we like it or not. So despite the common goals that they share regarding companies and also workers, they are still going to do anything what it takes to make as much profit as possible, because that's what companies are already oriented to do in the first place. And then, like previously mentioned, if it is also a norm, then this will be inevitably enforced on society. The fact stands that all of the things that you mentioned will be a burden for a lot of people to handle, not just people who are voluntarily working, but also people who are not able to achieve one single job. And it's going to be difficult for them to handle all of those expectations that society gives to them, because that is the norm, and they cannot do anything to fulfill that norm, to fulfill the wages and so on. And it's going to be tough for society, especially those who are underprivileged. Second thing, you also mentioned that the important it's really important to make sure that the workers are having free time and so on and so on. They will still have enough time, like 60 hours of work, and then they have 10 hours of work that they can allocate to other things. However, we need to keep in mind the fact that the importance of time does not take into account emergencies, like my second speaker has previously mentioned, because we need to know that the emergencies like maternal leaves or even getting sick, anything like that is still substantial to having an difficult time management in your two workings, which is the norm, because it's already difficult as it is to handle that with one singular work or occupation, especially you're going to impose the society to do multiple jobs simultaneously. It's going to be hard for them to handle, and it's going to be tough to make sure that everyone can do the same, especially, like previously mentioned, given the fact that underprivileged people also needs to be catered to in society. And we cannot just look into the fact that whether this will be beneficial or not, but we also need to take into consideration other people that we may previously not talk about. Next, like the second speaker has previously mentioned, we also want to emphasize on the fact that there is workers' exploitation, the fact that workers are being somewhat exploited by people who are, by the companies, in the sense that The exploitation comes as an indirect effect. In this situation, those exploitations comes from the fact that though with norm focuses on the fact that people have to work multiple jobs, which means that the wages are inevitably going to be less because people are expected to work for double their effort. They are expected to put out multiple efforts, and this is going to be difficult, especially for the people who cannot already withstand one single job, which means that they have a lot of more responsibilities to handle in 2 jobs as opposed to just one single job, which means that it's not something that they can have or that they can do if they are not prepared for that situation and circumstances. And next, again, underprivileged people do not have the means to be competitive as well. Like you mentioned that Raffi Ahmad, and we have also mentioned the fact that Raffi Ahmad is also privileged. But other people, taking into consideration the notion that we need to work multiple jobs as the norm, means that a lot of people are not going to be able to satisfy that norm, and there is going to be a lot of indirect consequences as a result of it. Like, for example, layoffs from certain companies with their work criteria and quotas not fulfilled because of said results of having the multiple jobs being a norm. Which means that we need to keep in mind the most important thing is that the status quo is already a difficult thing to comprehend. Why make it something more insanely difficult that we cannot be able to cater to other people's, especially if we're focusing on the underprivileged people that cannot sustain a single job, let alone multiple jobs. Next, the overvalue of big companies, because we need to understand, my second speaker also mentioned certain big companies like Apple's and so on, and those companies are big companies that will inevitably have a higher value, and they are most likely not gonna consider the workers, especially if they know that the norm is that people need to work multiple jobs to satisfy their living wages, like for example. Which means that the companies are still gonna do what they do best, which is make profit. They want to emphasize the fact that they need to make the most money because it's a capitalistic society that exists. And therefore, I believe that it's really terrible for the status quo to comprehend the norm that is currently being stated. The fact that one job as a norm enough is already a difficult stance, especially 2 jobs, meaning that most people are gonna be having troubles and difficulties that is outside of our comprehension. So that is all from my speech. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the speech. Next, to close the debate from Team Opposition, I call upon Opposition to reply. Hear, hear.
All right. It's still 7. Yeah, 3. Yeah? Okay. My speech will start in 3, 2, 1. So, ladies and gentlemen, this debate has gone in a pretty good way, and first and foremost, I'm going to identify the clashes. The first clash that we have right now, currently, is that the main one is how good polywork is to the workers. Now, ladies and gentlemen, my team has proven again and again why polywork is bad, why all of this government speech about making more money and making a livable wage through polywork is something that is achievable. But we have already proven that trying to make a livable wage through polywork is something that is worse than actually fixing the problem itself, that is making more legislation, making more workers' rights, making those companies pay a livable wage for the workers to live off, ladies and gentlemen. And my first speaker and my third speaker has already spoken again and again about and already refuted most of their arguments regarding how good working 2 jobs is. And the government team has only tried to refute, not refute, but to ignore most of our arguments and rebuttals. Right? The government has not provided any legitimate systematic benefits to the preference that they choose, while being unable to disprove the alleged destructive and painful things that will come about by changing this into the norm. The third speaker also seems to be a bit willfully ignorant towards most of our arguments, and saying, only refuting without explanation regarding how our motion, regarding how this motion would bring about the norm where people have to work more for less. Ladies and gentlemen, we have restated again and again that by creating this notion as a norm, a society on large would have more social disparity, more exploitation, more more workers having been exploited. And let's ignore the fact that the third speaker ignores that worker exploitation exists in general, but by creating this the status quo into a norm, we are creating a workforce where workers have to work more for less, and that is why, from the start and the beginning, we are proud to oppose. Thank you.
Thank you for that speech. Next, to close out the whole debate, I call upon Government Reply here.
Okay. This. Yeah. Okay, start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, opposition side always bring the issue about the polywork is bad, it's not good for health, mental health, your life, and then a company that always do exploit their employee to gain profit, and etc. etc. And first thing first that I want to clarify and make it clear is that company is profit oriented. Yes, they are. Company is always profit oriented. Is they evil? It depends on how you define they get profit. But really, we should realize that if someone in this case a company that want to get a bigger profit, one company should always pay someone that competent, that have qualified skills, then pay them properly. Why company should pay someone properly based on their skill? It's that because of someone always have a value. Employee, it's even though he work for a big tech company or a really big company like Apple, Facebook, or etc. A company that want to maintain their position, their profit, should pay someone properly. That's why exploitation point is not really exclusive and not really rebut our points about these things. Okay. Moving on, about underprivileged person or people, it's also a not exclusive argument because underprivileged people, it's always we can always find underprivileged person and people in our society. It is a case since 100 years ago. So underprivileged is always we can always find them. So if they want to be get higher in social ladder, it's not it is the condition for them to effort higher and maybe harder. But come on, guys, this is technology is everywhere. So a resource to learn something still is not. It's very accessible right now. So this thing we should realize. And then the benefit from this polywork itself is an employee can use their skill for one company and another skill for another company. Why? I mean, because they have about maybe two skills, but another skill is not fit in one company. So a poly worker, it can be an answer for a worker to utilize their skills in another company or in another place. Thank you.
Thank you for that speech, and it also closed the debate. To all the debaters, thank you. I'd like around 5 minutes to formulate my decision, so you may wait outside. And yeah, tunggu sampai dipanggil panitia lagi. Thank you guys. Oke, hi guys. Belum, masih kurang satu nggak? Oke. Hi guys, good. Ini kayak mau siang tapi kayak I can't say afternoon, whatever. Good morning, everyone. That was a lovely debate. I thoroughly enjoyed it. But since there's not going to be any oral adjudication, for the semifinals, I'm just gonna go into like some general comments and then go straight to my decision. Okay. So I think the debate was interesting. I think there were great ideas being mentioned. However, I would also like a lot more engagement between the two teams and how the argument would work in both sides of the world. Also, and this is I think for both teams especially. Some parts of the motion, some words of the motion were ignored when they could have been really powerful framings. That being said, I did come to a decision. Congratulations team's opposition from ICME for winning the debate and commiserations to team ESJ. Good luck in the finals. That's all for this round. Thank you guys. Kalau mau feedback langsung aja sekarang, jangan ngechat nanti.